Welcome on Texas football. Happy Sunday afternoon to you. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by Gerry Hamilton. Longhorn recruiting update here for folks. Gerry, Longhorns the last couple of days have taken one in the heart a little bit. They're 0 for 6 the last 3 days. Now, this includes what we think will be Xavier Griffin this evening or this afternoon, likely choosing Alabama, but it started with Xavier Crowell, the running back out of Alabama, signing and or committing with Alabama. Then we had 3 guys on Friday. All went opposite directions in Texas. And then James Johnson, the big defensive tackle out of Miami, also choosing Georgia yesterday. It's 6 guys, ostensibly, that were all national recruits, all opted elsewhere that we think Texas was the bridesmaid on every single one of them. Is there anything that you have to say about that?
Yeah, look, I think there's that's the number, but the reality is there's 3 guys they'll keep recruiting off of that list.
And who are those? So
Xavier Crowell, Malachi Lee, and James Johnson. So the reality is there's 3 guys they really, really wanted in that class, and that will be shown because they'll continue to recruit those guys. People don't want to hear through the whistle right now till signing day in December, right? Even though, I know it's tough right now, but just look at Sark's recruiting at Texas, and it's pretty much the reality of it. But there's 3 guys of those 6 that Texas will stay on for sure until December and try to keep working on.
All right. I look at that, and what do you think of, though, the fact that they did go 0 for 6? And I literally think they were bridesmaids on all 6. It's like close but no cigar. In recruiting, if you're second, you're last. It's just the same. Anything that you think that you kind of have uncovered or have been thinking about as it relates to that?
Well, it's just recruiting's different now. You can lose a recruitment if you're 100,000 less on an NIL deal, or you have a guy slotted and somebody else has a guy slotted, then you're not really going to win that battle anyways. So there's where these teams, and it goes for a lot of teams in this. This is not just a Texas thing. It's where guys have people slotted in their programs or whatnot. And then that's a lot of times that's going to determine what happens on some certain recruitments. I mean, to this day, Samuel Roseboro wanted to go to Texas. Texas did not have him slotted where A&M had him slotted in terms of need. And I think he's a tremendous football player, and that's going to happen. But so that's why I look at 3 of those guys as guys that I expect Texas to continue to recruit. Well, maybe just 2, though. Whatever Tyler Atkinson does in his recruitment, I think will be impactful if Texas continues, if they try to make a push for Xavier Griffin, because I reported initially, and I've stood by it, it was unlikely those 2 guys were going to the same school.
So you think that there's 4 then of the 6? If you're adding Xavier Griffin to that group as well as Xavier,
and I just don't think it'll happen. So that's potentially another.
Okay, gotcha. All right, basically Malachi Lee,
James Johnson, Crowell, yes.
Okay, got it. And you're debating on what happens maybe with Xavier Griffin. All right, he is expected, by the way, to choose Alabama this afternoon, this evening. Pretty sure that's going to happen, and it will fall. Great player, by the way.
Yes,
for the Crimson Tide. All right, let's look forward to this week. Get out of the morass and negative feelings. You think this is going to be a pretty big week for the Longhorns? And in retrospect, they lead for a number. Like, they didn't lead for any of the players last week. They lead for a number of players that are going to make decisions this week.
It should be a good week for Texas. If not, then then they've entered a rough patch. I mean, let's just be real. I mean, Kendall Gerville announces on the 2nd out of Fort Myers, a defensive lineman. He's a guy Texas has been doing really well with. Georgia 2, Florida 3 in that race. July 2nd. Look, that could be a good day for Texas. Trenton Henderson's also on July 2nd, the 5-star edge out of Pensacola Catholic, who Texas made a big push for, got him on campus twice late here in June. I think that's Florida leading Texas and LSU. We'll see if Texas does enough to come from behind and went out for a 5-star defensive end edge player, who I think is one of the best players in the country. Then on July 3rd, Kosi Okpala a linebacker from Mady Creek in the Houston area, who has been a Texas lean for a while. Penn State, Baylor is your competition there. So, that's one that Texas has led for a while. Then July 4th gets really interesting with John Turntine on the 4th at North Crowley, a guy Texas has been doing well with for a couple of years in this recruitment. A&M made a big run. Michigan's made a big run. Stanford's the 4th team in it. All the chatters, it's Texas or Michigan. Well, Michigan's had a number of offensive line commits now. A&M has not given up on that. Look, we reported it's not going to be A&M, but that doesn't mean A&M gives up on a recruitment. That's a big one on the 4th. Obviously, Caden Finley's on the 4th, but that one would have to switch. I think that's Notre Dame over Texas unless barring a change early this week.
And you say that on Finley, Jerry, just based on what you're hearing behind the scenes. I actually had heard an interview with Dia Bell over the weekend, and they asked him, hey, who are you recruiting right now that's not already committed? And he brought up Caden Finley specifically, but if he's leaning the legacy to the University of Texas, he's leaning to the Irish right now. Texas coming up short on probably a pair of legacies, we think, not only Caden Finley, but also Jalen Lott, young man out of Frisco that we think is either headed to USC or Oregon at this point.
And Bobby, then there's some intrigue, I think, on the 4th to follow. Does a Felix Ojo announce a commitment date this week? And could that be on the 4th? I believe his birthday is on July 4th. That doesn't mean he'd announce on the 4th. Then does Tyler Atkinson do something here late this week? I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I do think it's an early July decision potentially for Tyler Atkinson, the 5-star linebacker out of Grayson High in Loganville, same high school as Nick Brooks played at last year, which I believe is a Georgia-Texas decision coming up barring a change. So do a couple of those guys also announce dates early this week that are going to be on July 4th, July 5th in that time frame. We're kind of watching that.
You think they may speed up the process, those two guys potentially, and add, because right now they're not on our list with commitment dates?
I think it's possible. We'll see.
Okay.
I think I think a lot of these kids are going to go early second week of July. The question is, do a couple of those guys actually move it up to the 4th, right around the 4th? I mean, Ojo does have a birthday there, but I'm not saying he would announce on his birthday. But we're watching those two guys to see if they kind of lock in, announce a date this week of which they're going to make announce their decision.
Gotcha. Jerry, I'm looking at the list and whatnot of everybody that's involved here right now. And after Caden Finley, we go to this next group that's a week out, basically. Mentioned Jalen Lott. He's on the 4th. But Dramarian Carlton, defensive end out of Temple. Baylor has made a late run on him. Smoke Matthews, the cornerback out of Charlotte. It sounds like it's Texas and South Carolina for him. And then Caden Prothro and Hezzy Kent, the two big tight ends out of Georgia. One seems like he's leaning towards Georgia pretty heavily right now. That's Caden Prothro. The other one looks like it may be Texas, Florida for Hezzy Kent at this point. Is that accurate in your opinion?
Yeah, I think Florida State's trying to make a run there. Hezzy Kent, I know he likes Texas a lot. But where's the NIL fall for Texas versus Florida or latecomer in that Florida State? That'll be interesting to watch for me. We also have Kiwi Brown, the tight end out there for Corona Centennial, who could do something in early July as well.
Yep. All right. Hey, thank you to our sponsor. We got some more to get to, but thank you to our sponsor. That is Mark Saunders over at Allstate. You're in good hands with Mark Saunders, 30-plus years of experience with Texas alum. If you're local to Round Rock, Austin, greater Austin area, make sure you give Mark Saunders a shout, 512-218-8571. That's 512-218-8571. Or you can email him, marksaunders@allstate.com. That's marksaunders@allstate.com. Jerry, I'm looking at this in a whole, and a lot of Texas fans are going to be disappointed about what transpired over the last 72 hours. All right? Understandably so. You said something that struck me a little bit when we were just talking. You said if they don't do well this coming week, then there might be some cause for concern. It's hard for me, as someone that's watched Texas and Steve Sarkisian recruit over the last couple of years, to say that there's ever really a time for concern, because he seems to pull a rabbit out of his hat at last minutes. I mean, you mentioned these guys already that they're going to be continuing to recruit even after they've committed elsewhere. Why do you think that it might be cause for concern if they don't do well this week?
Because there's some guys they've been leading on for a while. I mean, you go back to when I went to Fort Myers in May and talked to Kendall Graville. He put it on video. Texas was number one. He's consistently said that. He's been very transparent after his official visits. So, look, like you said, Bobby, entering last week, those guys, Texas, they lost out on some guys. Even Malachi Lee early on in the process, Michigan was considered the favorite. Texas did a good job making that a strong two-man race, getting him on campus. You look at Xavier Crowell, right? I mean, Alabama was considered the favorite since late in the spring, headed into June official visits. James Johnson, we put out there that Georgia was the favorite entering the Texas OV weekend. So Texas really wasn't the leader for those guys. This week's a little different because Kendall Graville's one Texas has been doing very well with. John Turntine's one that Texas has been doing well with for a while, has family in Austin, sisters going to college in the city of Austin. And Kyle Flood's been recruiting him at a high level as long as anybody in the country has. So there's a number of guys. And does a Felix Ojo announce a decision late this week? We'll see on that. That's one that Texas has been doing well with. So these are guys, there's multiple guys who Texas has been doing very well with. If you don't close those out, then, then you're going to be like, you got to come from behind on a lot of guys senior year at that point. That Texas has has flipped some guys, and they've added two guys like Justice Terry wasn't on the board. Grayson Littleton wasn't an offer, right? Zealous Hicks was a reclass. But Texas hasn't. They've got the guys they were supposed to get headed into the season. Then they put together the rest of the class around it. That's the whole thing for me.
I'm looking at it basically from what you're telling me. The guys that Texas is leading going into this week: Kendall Graville, we believe. And now I want to say this: we believe Texas is leading or has at least a better than 50-50 shot of eventually winning. Kendall Graville, Cozy Okpala. Yeah, linebacker out of Matey Creek, we like a lot. John Turntine, offensive lineman. And then you have guys like Smoke Matthews and possibly Jamarian Carlton, but those are 2 weeks out. And then you're looking at guys that are toss-ups or relative toss-ups that they've got to make some moves on. Caden Finley, Trenton Henderson, perhaps one of the tight ends, Hezzy Kent or Caden Prothro. I hear what you're saying, okay, and I agree with you. They are at 15 commitments right now.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that I talked to Darren Heitner, the NIL guy, lawyer, yesterday on the Saturday conversation is how much can you get around the cap? What are the loopholes these days? It seems like certain schools feel like there's some pretty straightforward ways to get around the cap. And some schools may feel like, hey, wait a minute, we got to be judicious with this until we see what's going on. I'm not saying Texas isn't, making a run at everybody, okay? But I do think that Texas is, being one of the more judicious schools as it relates to that right now, and having to be because of the new rules. They're not going to subvert the rules at the outset.
And I want to say this. So if Texas has one thing that's very important here, if Texas has a good week on the trail this week, they're going to be sitting there with a top 7 recruiting class, maybe top 5, depending on how it goes. Right there again. So look, these things, you make these things up quickly in terms of class rankings and how the fan base feels. So if Texas just closed out on the guys that we think they could close out on this week, they make a decent move in your class rankings, which people are looking at, and then it becomes filling your needs after that. And there's going to be needs to fill senior season into the season for this class. But if they have a good week, on the trail here, suddenly Texas is going to be sitting there anywhere from 5, 6, 7 ranked class and not nearly done with the class.
All right, we'll talk a little bit more tonight on the live stream about Kendall Graville because he is the next big name prospect that's going to announce his decision that we believe Texas has a real shot at. Jerry, you went by the school. phenomenal football player, really strong at the point of attack.
Yes.
And this is somebody that Texas has made a priority really from the very get-go. Kenny Baker went down there and has been on him from the start. He's friends also with Myron Charles, the current Texas Longhorn on campus as well. So we'll talk more about him tonight on the live stream. A lot of stuff going on, though. A little disappointing, no doubt about it. But Texas was coming from behind on all but one of those players, really, after the weekend, and that was Chase Calicut, the in-state defensive back out of North Shore that ended up going Georgia's way on Friday afternoon. That was the only one that ever really thought Texas was, quote-unquote, leading on, I guess is the best way to put it. All right, Jerry, anything else before we let folks go this Sunday afternoon?
No, I mean, look, it's a marathon. These classes are a marathon, and I stand by what I've said. I think by the time that December rolls around, Sark will sign a 5th straight top 5 class. The road's always winding.
Yeah, I think that you've been very consistent in that regard, and it makes it hard when you lose some guys to stay consistent, but you've been fairly consistent in that regard.
I mean, it's the same. Last year we went through it when Decorian Moore and some of those guys, July 4th.
It was July 4th was a bloodbath.
Yes.
Not only was Decorian Moore the receiver, but 2 guys that end up being in the class, Josiah Sharma and Myron Charles, both committed to Oregon and Florida State, respectively.
Yeah. So this happened last year as well. Texas battled back. We kind of look. That's just the way Sark and those guys are going to operate. They're not going to move down the B list guys. They're going to continue to stay on their guys. Texas will recruit Malachi Lee this year. They'll recruit Xavier Crowell. They'll recruit James Johnson. Those things are going to happen. So we'll see what happens. I'm also, again, watching to see who else may set up an announcement date, not for this week, but announce their date this week. Could it be on the 4th? Could it be on the 5th? Could it be early next week? I think we'll start to see some movement this week on that as well.
All right. That's Gerry Hamilton of On Texas Football. Make sure you guys check us out. We're dropping recruiting news all the time over at ontexasfootball.com. If you're would like to be a subscriber to ontexasfootball.com, we'd appreciate it. Become an OG by using the promo code OTFOG, and you get it ontexasfootball.com, an annual subscription for $39.95 for 1 year. That's like $3 a cup of coffee a month. Again, ontexasfootball.com. Join Jerry, myself, Jeff Howe, Blake Monroe, as well as CJ Vogel, who was over at the Manning Passing Academy and who will have more for you guys a little bit later today from that camp as well. All right, Jerry, you have a good one, buddy. Have a good Sunday afternoon to everybody out there. You guys have a good one. Hook 'em.